There's a place in France where the ladies wear no pants, but they better have their papers. Australia, the land down under, is under martial law. And we take a look at Johns Hopkins University's new pillar to stop mis- and disinformation about COVID by taking our freedom of speech marching orders from the WHO and the United Nations. All that and more on Alex Elkins. Wait a moment. But I'm frightened for our children, for the life that we are living is in vain, and the sunshine we've been waiting for has turned to rain. You know, those words were sung many, many years ago by the fabulous Moody Blues, and I don't think they could be any truer then than they are today. And I'm speaking about a local community board meeting that I attended in Lebanon, Oregon. Hi, Pumpkin.
Hi.
Papa's filming right now. I need you to give me some privacy. What do you need?
Do you want to see Grandma? She's
Grandma's here right now?
Yeah.
Oh.
She's outside with Mom.
Oh, she is? Well, I'm actually, did Mama want me to come out?
No.
Okay. Well, then I'm going to see Grandma next time because Papa's right in the middle of filming something right now. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, I love you.
Love you.
It's those little ones that we're worried about. Lebanon School District had a meeting the other night with 100+ angry parents that were protesting the new Governor Brown's mandate on mask wearing in schools for K through 12. While there's very little science to back up the idea that the spread of COVID-19 is more prevalent in our youth, the mandate is now declaring that children must wear a mask while in school at all times. Now, whether or not you believe in wearing the mask is really non-consequential. The fact that the government is now mandating what we have to do with our children should raise concern for any parent out there. The same government that says that they care about your children probably couldn't tell you their middle names, what their birthdays are, or what their favorite food is. Because really, while they claim to care about your children, what they really care about is the money that comes along with them when you enter them in the school district. Every student averages about $10,000 per year. Now, unenrolling students from the school district, which is the threat that most parents are acting upon in order to keep these mandates and their away from their children and keep them healthy while they're in school, is the major threat that they're promising and could draw millions of dollars away from local school districts. Now, that's something I'm sure that would get Kate Brown's attention if she would bother to listen to her constituents. But, you know, when you're placed in office without a vote, I guess your constituents really don't matter. Let's take a quick look at this video of a prominent parent who's in the public eye and addressed a school board meeting in his own hometown, and see what he has to say about COVID numbers versus flu numbers.
Hi, my name is Matt Walsh. I'm a community member in Nashville and a father of 4. You and the school board have decided that our kids should go to school all day, every day, wearing muzzles like rabid dogs. I have listened to your arguments, and I've noticed that they're missing a few things, namely evidence, data, science, common sense, and basic human decency. You've presented no facts at all, so let me do that now. Here they are. COVID poses almost no risk to our kids at all. 4.2 million children have tested positive for COVID. A total of 0.008% of them have died. Overall, 0.0004% of the child population in this country, I'm talking right now, in this country has died of COVID. Twice as many have died by drowning each year. A bathtub poses more risk to your child than COVID. Your child is far more likely to die in the car on the way to school than he is to die from COVID at school. What about the flu? The CDC estimates that 480 kids died from the flu in the 2018-2019 season. That's more than have died from COVID in a year and a half. Now, did anyone on this board suggest at any point that year that kids wear masks? Did anyone in this room suggest that at any point anyone wear masks for flu, which again is more dangerous to kids than COVID? That's a fact. Now, do you know what it's called when you force your children to wear masks for fear of a virus that poses almost no threat to them? It's called child abuse. You want to look up a disease, look up Munchausen by proxy, because that's what this is. If you think I'm exaggerating, then how would you respond to a parent who forced his kid to wear a football helmet every day, all day, for fear of falling coconuts and meteors? Your kid is almost as likely to die of COVID as he is from a rock from the sky, and yet if you saw that, you would say to that parent that he is abusive, that he is forcing his kid to participate in this utterly insane charade in order to satisfy his delusional, psychotic hypochondria. Now, do any of you know what sort of psychological damage we do to children by forcing them to cover their faces, teaching them that the air is toxic, that everyone around them is sick, depriving them of the ability to see each other's faces? Do you know what kind of damage that does? Have you thought about it? Have you wondered about the health effects of forcing kids to breathe through sweat and spit and dirt-soaked rags every single day? Are you sure that there are no health risks? Do you know what the effect is on children developmentally if they're not able to read each other's facial cues? What about learning to read and they can't see the teacher enunciating the words? What does it do to a child's developing immune system if he has to wear a mask all day, every day? Have you taken any of this into consideration at all? Well, you haven't. You're satisfied to place this burden on children anyway. And why? It's not to keep them safe. They are safe. It's not to keep the adults safe. They can all get vaccinated if they want. No, you do it to make yourselves feel better and to protect yourselves politically. The child's mask is a symbolic security blanket for you, not them. It's a disgrace and you should all be ashamed. Thank you for your time.
We're going to go ahead and take a look at a video from a health care worker, as a matter of fact, a doctor with his own private practice, who lays it out pretty clearly on why these mask mandates anywhere, first of all, don't work for our children, and secondly, don't belong in our schools because it eliminates parents' choice.
Dr. Dan Stock, 5777 West 700 North McCordsville, Indiana. To address your comment, gee, it's hard to believe we're 18 months into this and still having a problem, and I would suggest the reason we still have a problem is because we're doing things that are not useful, and we're getting our sources of information from the Indiana State Board of Health and the CDC, who actually don't bother to read science before they do this. I'm actually a functional family medicine physician. That means I am specially trained in immunology and inflammation regulation, and everything being recommended by the CDC and the State Board of Health is actually contrary to all the rules of science. So things you should know about coronavirus and all other respiratory viruses: they are spread by aerosol particles, which are small enough to go through every mask. By the way, the literature that supports all of that is in a flash drive that we presented to you. It's been given to the Secretary. As a matter of fact, it quotes at least 3 studies sponsored by the NIH to that exact fact, even though the CDC and the NIH have chosen to ignore the very science that they paid to have done. That is why you keep struggling with this, is because you cannot make these viruses go away. The natural history of all respiratory viruses is that they circulate all year long, waiting for the immune system to get sick through the winter or become deranged, as has happened recently with these vaccines, and then they cause symptomatic disease. Because they cannot be filtered out and they have animal reservoirs, and this is a very important point, no one can make this virus go away. The CDC has managed to convince everybody that we can handle this like we did smallpox, where we could make a virus go away. Smallpox had no animal reservoirs. The only thing it learned to infect was humans. That's why we were able to make that virus go away. That will not happen with this any more than it will with influenza, the common cold, respiratory syncytial virus, adenoviral respiratory syndromes, or anything else that has animal reservoirs. So the reason you can't do this is because you're trying to do something which has already been tried and can't be done. Equally important is that vaccination changes none of this, especially with this vaccine. And I would hope this board would start asking itself, before it considers taking the advice of the CDC, the NIH, and the State Board of Health, why we are doing things about this that we didn't do for the common cold, influenza, or respiratory syncytial virus. And then ask yourself, Why is a vaccine that is supposedly so effective having a breakout in the middle of the summer when respiratory viral syndromes don't do that? And to help you understand that, you need to know the condition that is called antibody-mediated viral enhancement. That is a condition done when vaccines work wrong, as they did in every coronavirus study done in animals on coronaviruses after the SARS outbreak, and done in respiratory syncytial virus, where a vaccine used in a vulnerable individual done the wrong way, which cannot be done right for a respiratory virus which has a very low pathogenicity rate, causes the immune system to actually fight the virus wrong and let the virus become worse than it would with native infection. And that is why you are seeing an outbreak right now. And in fact, in that flash drive you're going to have coming to you and in the emails with 6 extra will be a study showing that 75% of people who had COVID-19 positive symptom cases in Barnstable, Massachusetts outbreak were fully vaccinated. Therefore, there is no reason for treating any person vaccinated any differently than any person unvaccinated. You should also know that no vaccine, even the ones I support and would give to myself and my children, ever stops infection. In 2014, there was outbreak of mumps in the National Hockey League. The only people who came down with symptoms were the people who were unvaccinated or unknown vaccine status. Boy, that sounds like a great argument for vaccines. But a question that you should ask yourself, knowing that half of the people who came down with symptomatic disease had no contact with an unvaccinated or unknown vaccine status individual, where did they get the disease? And the answer was from the vaccinated individuals. No vaccine prevents you from getting infection. You get infected, you shed pathogen. This is especially true of viral respiratory pathogens. You just don't get symptomatic from it. So you cannot stop spread. You cannot make these numbers that you've planned on get better by doing any of the things you're doing, because that is the nature of viral respiratory pathogens. And you can't prevent it with a vaccine because they don't do the very thing you're wanting them to do. And you will be chasing this the remainder of your life until you recognize that the Center for Disease Control and the Indiana State Board of Health are giving you very bad scientific guidance. And instead, read the articles that are going to come on the email and are on this flash drive, and listen to the people in this audience here tonight who actually have recognized the advice they are getting from the CDC and the NIH is counterfactual. And that's why you're still fighting this with this vaccine that supposedly was going to make all of this go away, but has suddenly managed to make an outbreak of COVID-19 develop in the middle of the summer when vitamin D levels are at their highest. By the way, the other thing that would be necessary any vaccine restriction to be considered is if there were no other treatment available. And I can tell you, having treated over 15 COVID-19 patients, that between active loading with vitamin D, ivermectin, and zinc, that there is not a single person who has come anywhere near the hospital. And we already have studies that show that if you achieve a 25 hydroxyvitamin D level greater than 55, your risk of COVID-19 death will drop down to 1/4 of the population average for the United States. And there are active treatment trials included on that flash drive that show the same is true. So if you were going to discriminate based upon vaccine, you should also discriminate based upon 25 hydroxyvitamin D level, zinc taste test response, and probably previous infection, since there are also studies on that flash drive that show that people who have recovered from COVID-19 infection actually get no benefit from vaccination at all, no reduction in symptoms, no reduction in hospitalization, and suffer 2 to 4 times the rate of side effects if they are subsequently vaccinated.
Now, these aren't my words. This is a doctor, Dr. Dan Stock, who spoke in front of his Indiana school board to explain what he knows in his professional opinion and training on what the numbers are and what we really have to fear from this coronavirus in our children's schools. It seems to me what we really have to fear is big government overreaching their powers and stepping in too far to police and restrict our children whom they don't care or know anything about. Well, you may not have known, but for the past few weeks, our friends to the south in the beautiful country, sovereign country I may add, of Australia, our friends have been under martial law. That's right, you heard me right, martial law, meaning the military has now taken over. Citizens have been restricted movement throughout their communities. In fact, they are not allowed to travel more than 3 miles from their own homes. They are being told to not visit with one another, to stay quarantined and, of course, masked. And even if they encounter their neighbors at the grocery store, they're not to engage in conversation. Now, this sounds like a dystopian novel, something out of an Orwellian book, but it's happening right now.
Whilst it is in human nature to engage in conversation with others, to be friendly, unfortunately, this is not the time to do that. So even if you run into your next door neighbour in the shopping centre, in the Coles, whilst you're at Coles, Woolworths or Aldi or any other grocery shop, don't start up a conversation. Now is the time for minimising your interactions with others. Even if you've got a mask, do not think that affords total protection. We want to be absolutely sure that as we go about our daily lives, we do not come into contact with anyone else that would pose a risk.
She claims that interaction with other people is human nature, and I contest that it is a human need. It is not good for man to be alone. It's not good for people to be alone. Ostracizing other people and yourself from any human interaction cannot be a good thing. Now, she did mention that this is not the time to be nice to one another. Trust me, if you've ever gotten on Twitter or Facebook and mentioned anything that opposes masks or vaccines, you'll know that everybody is well aware that this is not the time to be kind to each other. Restricting conversation amongst people, neighbors, that inhibits speech, that inhibits ideas, it also inhibits health. She makes another point too, that even if you are masked or vaccinated, you still pose a threat to your neighbors. Now, according to every study that's been done, or at least been thrown in my face angrily by people that are for these mandates, masks work, vaccines work. What is there to be afraid of? It leads you to a red flag and makes you wonder if we're not allowed even to talk to our neighbors. What are they trying to inhibit? What are they trying to stop? Well, what they're trying to inhibit is what's called an infodemic, and we're going to get into that when we talk about Johns Hopkins Medical School in just a minute. Before we dive into the Johns Hopkins Medical School infodemic and ceasing of mis and disinformation, I want to turn our attention to another nation, European country, that is not quite under martial law yet, but they're certainly on the fast track of doing so. The romantic country of France. France, the country of love, of baguettes, of croissants, of body odor. French authorities are now patrolling the streets, going through from cafe to cabaret, and asking for people's vaccination records. Now, a lot of people would make the assertion that, well, this is just for safety and they're only doing it for the benefit and the health of their citizens. You know, a lot of people might have said that in 1939 Poland as well. And before you go jumping on Twitter to talk about how the fat Aquaman said that he's equating World War II in the concentration camps and boxcars, remember, it started with the media taking over and the propaganda machine pushing the idea that people that you live amongst, around, your neighbors, your family, your friends, could possibly be your enemy if they suffer from wrongthink. Hi there, Facebook users. Are you like I was, getting thrown into Facebook jail for 7, 10, 15, 30 days at a time? You know why. It's your own fault. It's called wrong. You're You're going against the grain. You're rocking the boat. You're not going with the flow. Wrongthink can be caused by thinking for yourself and not listening to the group. Side effects from wrongthink can include ostracization, exclusion from group activities, being labeled a Trump supporter, holding traditional family values, believing in God, trying not to spend more than you make, using logic, reason, facts, and evidence, being called crazy, conspiracy theorist, QAnon supporter, and other monikers. Wrongthink can attack even the best of us, including me, comedian Alex Elkin, which is why I made a change. I stopped identifying as some dumb white male. Come on, we've held the reins long enough. I started identifying as a Facebook puppet in my last 7-day stint in Facebook jail. It really changed my way of thinking. Thinking right. Not only have I dropped a few pounds of flesh, but I've gained a few ounces of felt. Yes, you're seeing a softer Alex Elkin, a fuzzier Alex Elkin, a non-threatening Alex Elkin who's racially neutral, genderless, and best of all, this comedian Alex Elkin can't speak unless somebody is speaking for him. There's something better out there. Give up your wrong think, you racist, homophobe, patriarchal, racist, white supremacist, racist bastard. Be a better person. Become a Facebook puppet like me, comedian Alex Elkin. I've taken on a new role on Facebook. Being a Facebook puppet is actually totally weak, and even though you think you are being accepted by the group, one day the woke mob of canceling Karens will come after you and hate what you have to say, and you'll have no one to stand up for you or your right to speak because you've given them the power to shut you up long ago. And now you're just a sniveling socialist parroting party slogans in unison, so nobody will turn you into the Facebook fuck police that you so wholeheartedly supported, shutting down people who disagree with you. There, is that what you wanted? I hope you're happy now, you little bitch. Ask your doctor if being a Facebook puppet is right for you. It didn't start with trains and camps. It started with, these people are lesser than. These people need to be marked so we know who they are. These people need to have papers so they can be limited on how and where they can travel. And these people need to be eliminated. Now, we're not there yet. Thank God. And hopefully we will never get there. However, with the road that we're going down right now, let me just ask you this. When it started with just wear the mask, and people complied, and it moved on to, look, it's just 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and people complied. And here we are, a year and a half later. Just get the vaccine, and people are complying. It's going to get to just get the passport. Where does it go from there? I contend that it goes right into, hey, just get on the train. Just go into the camp. Just get in the showers. Now, you can get angry at that statement, but if you are, remember, that's because you feel something, because you're still human. Which leads me to my final story here. Johns Hopkins Medical School has developed, through a series of their doctors, pillars, 4 pillars that they can use and are implementing to combat dis or misinformation about COVID-19. Well, first of all, my contention, now I'm not a professional or a doctor, that's right, but my contention is, who is determining what is mis and disinformation? Because right now we have the big 4, big media, big tech, big pharma, and big government all singing the same song, telling us what the information is and should be. Now, anybody that contends with that, for example, Rand Paul, or some doctors that don't exactly agree with the vaccinations or masks, are being stifled. Rand Paul was recently eliminated from YouTube for daring to speak against the U.S. government. Now, keep in mind, he is the U.S. government. And for YouTube to act like an arm of the government by eliminating his speech to his own constituents and the rest of the country, it seems to me like they're acting like a government agency, which they claim they're not. But when we have this kind of totalitarian action going on in our big tech, we need to start looking at the red flags. I take us to Johns Hopkins Medical School document here, and I'll post the link as well so you can take a look at it for yourself. And what really troubled me was the fact that, like I stated, they want to determine what mis and disinformation is without any question from any dissenting viewpoint. But secondly, they would like the information, or as they call it, their worry of an infodemic being spread by stifling the freedom of speech that we here in America hold absolutely dear. Now, as a stand-up comedian, I live and die by the First Amendment. I have to be able to say what and whatever I like, wherever I like. There are consequences to words, but the ideas must be heard. The issue that I take with this is where they're giving us our marching orders on what can and can't be said under the banner of free speech. It's not our First Amendment. It's not our Constitution. It's not from our Bill of Rights here in America. They're taking it from the WHO and the United Nations. Now, we know that the WHO has been proven to contradict itself alongside the CDC for at least a year and a half now. Remember, we didn't need masks, and then we did need masks, and then we needed certain types of masks, and then we needed 2 masks. And may I contend that if you think that 2 masks are safer than 1, your dad should have worn 3 condoms. Please don't breed. So, knowing that we have been given misinformation from the very people who are trying to stifle misinformation or an infodemic, it troubles me to think that they're going to be the arbiters of what we can and can't say. And to what standard or barometer are they going to hold the valuable freedom of free speech? Keep in mind that the United Nations is pretty much inclusive of just about all the nations of the world, including countries like Cuba, where even the word liberty and freedom are considered to be anti-government speech. Countries like Iran, which are not very open to listening to the ideas of their people. In fact, they don't really value human life. And I'm looking at you, my friends in the LGBTQIA+ community. Good luck living your life and your truth in a country like Iran, where if they find that you are conducting yourself in the sexual business that they find abhorrent, will toss you off a building, dip you in boiling water, leave you out in the hot sun in a cage to decay and die. And these are actual things that they do in these countries. Or the People's Republic of China, which, as we know by proof, have been caging and putting in internment camps the Muslim Uyghurs of the country. We saw a video over last year of them welding people into their homes to make sure that they're quarantined. This is also the country that released this pandemic upon us. And forgive me, but fuck you, China. Fuck you very much. These are countries that don't care about human life, they don't care about individual freedoms, and they certainly don't care about Americans. Yet, our own university, Johns Hopkins Medical School, is telling us that we need to listen to countries like these when it comes to what we can and can't say about this virus, pandemic, masks, our lives. We still have rights. We still have freedoms. We are still sovereign people whose rights were given to us by a creator and are inalienable. And they are not given to us and granted us by our overlords in government whom we voted in, supposedly. They are given to us by our creator. And if we do not exercise them, and may I say even further, if we do not even know them, how then can we defend them? So I'm not telling you how to think. I'm not telling you what to think. Just asking you once again, hey,